Welcome to Jehovah News, your trusted source for Christian faith updates. Brought to you by Jehovah's House of Saints. Stay tuned for the latest news and insights to inspire and uplift your spiritual journey. Stay connected with us as we bring you all the breaking Christian news, presented by the dedicated team at Jehovah's House of Saints. Thank you for tuning in to Jehovah News.
Have you ever wondered about the significance of the number 13 in the Bible? This number holds a symbolic representation of rebellion and lawlessness, with its roots tracing back to Nimrod, the mighty hunter who was before the Lord. This means he tried to take the place of God, as told in Genesis 10:9. Intriguingly, Nimrod was the 13th generation in Ham's line, one of Noah's 3 sons who survived the Great Flood. The number 13 also symbolizes the governments created by men, inspired by Satan, in outright defiance against the eternal. This rebellious spirit is illustrated in the phrase Valley of Hinnom, which is mentioned 13 times in Scripture. This valley was the scene of the evil-inspired rites of the pagan god Moloch, or Molech, whose practices were given credibility by King Solomon in order to please his non-Israelite wives, as mentioned in 1 Kings 11:7. One of the appalling ways Molech was worshipped was through the sacrifice of children, who were placed on the red-hot arms of the idol and burned alive. The association of this valley with fire serves as a grim reminder of the ultimate punishment that unrepentant and rebellious sinners will receive in the lake of fire, as foretold in Revelation 19:20, 20, 9, 10, 14, 15. In summary, the number 13 in the Bible is symbolic of rebellion, lawlessness, and defiance against God. It is associated with negative events and acts of disobedience, tracing back to the time of Nimrod and extending to the practices in the Valley of Hinnom. The number 13 has indeed been linked to acts of rebellion and defiance against God. Now, let's delve into the instances where the number 13 appears in the Bible. The longest name of a book in the Bible, Thessalonians, carries 13 letters. A subtle presence, but intriguing nonetheless, isn't it? Another compelling appearance lies in the book of Revelation, where the dragon, a symbol for Satan, is found 13 times. This serves to emphasize Satan's role in all forms of rebellion against God. Venturing into the book of Romans, the Apostle Paul lists 23 defining characteristics of sinful people possessing a debased or reprobate mind. And guess what the 13th characteristic is? They are haters of God. Let's turn the pages to the book of Esther. Haman the Agagite had a decree signed on Nisan 13 to exterminate all Jews in the Persian Empire on Adar 13. Haman's sinister plans, however, were thwarted by the courageous Queen Esther and Mordecai. Remember the story of Jericho? The number 13 leaves its mark there too. The city was marched around for 6 straight days, and on the 7th day, it was marched 7 times, adding up to 13. King Solomon, renowned for his wisdom, spent a little more than 7 years building Jerusalem's temple. Yet he devoted 13 years to building his own home. What an interesting contrast. The Bible also mentions at least 13 famines. These famines are scattered across various books from Genesis to Acts. In Mark 7, Jesus cites 13 things that defile a person. The list includes adulteries, fornications, evil thoughts, murders, covetousness, thefts, wickedness, licentiousness, guile, blasphemy, foolishness, pride, and an evil eye. As we can see, the number 13 has appeared in several significant scenes throughout the Bible. There are more instances where the number 13 plays a significant role. Let's delve into the tale of the destruction of Jericho, a narrative where the number 13 leaves an indelible mark. The city was marched around for 6 consecutive days. On the 7th day, it was marched around 7 times. Add those together, and we get the number 13. It's no coincidence that this number, symbolic of rebellion, is stamped all over the downfall of a city that defied the will of God. Moving on, the number 13 makes an appearance in the construction times of King Solomon. Solomon, renowned for his wisdom, spent a little over 7 years building Jerusalem's temple. Contrastingly, he spent 13 years constructing his own home. This extended time period, marked by the number 13, could be interpreted as Solomon's shift in focus from serving God to indulging his own desires, a subtle form of rebellion. The Bible also mentions no less than 13 famines. Each famine, a time of great hardship and suffering, could be seen as a consequence of humanity's rebellion against God's will and natural order. From Genesis to Acts, these famines serve as solemn reminders of the potential outcomes of defiance. So in these stories, the number 13 continues to symbolize rebellion and defiance. It's etched into tales of cities falling, kings losing their way, and societies suffering. But remember, it's not about fear or superstition. Instead, it serves as a narrative tool, a symbol reminding us of the importance of humility, obedience, and respect for divine authority. The number 13 continues to symbolize rebellion and defiance in these stories. In Mark 7, Jesus mentions 13 things that defile a person. This intriguing biblical passage demonstrates how the number 13 is not only linked to rebellion, but also to spiritual defilement. The 13 defilements outlined by Jesus are adulteries, fornications, evil thoughts, murders, covetousness, thefts, wickedness, licentiousness, guile, blasphemy, foolishness, pride, and an evil eye. Each of these defilements represents a departure from the holy path, a rejection of God's divine laws, and a surrender to sin. Adulteries and fornications represent breaches of the sacred bonds of marriage and the misuse of the gift of sexuality. Evil thoughts, murders, and covetousness depict the poisoning of the mind and heart and the infliction of harm on others. Thefts, wickedness, and licentiousness are indicative of a lack of respect for the rights and dignity of others. Guile, blasphemy, foolishness, and pride demonstrate a rejection of God's authority and wisdom. Lastly, an evil eye symbolizes a negative outlook, a refusal to see the good in others and in the world. But just as the number 13 is associated with these forms of spiritual defilement, it is also connected with God's mercy. According to Jewish tradition, when Moses ascended Mount Sinai carrying a new set of tablets for the 10 Commandments, God enveloped him like a cloud and proclaimed 13 forms of his mercy. These holy attributes, drawn from Exodus 34, 6, 7, include God's graciousness, compassion, patience, love, faithfulness, forgiveness, righteousness, and justice, among others. So while the number 13 might be linked with rebellion and defilement, it is also emblematic of God's boundless mercy. This duality serves as a potent reminder of the human capacity for sin and the divine capacity for forgiveness. It underscores our constant struggle between our earthly weaknesses and our spiritual aspirations. In spite of the number 13 often symbolizing rebellion, it is also associated with God's mercy. This beautifully illustrates the balance between human frailty and divine compassion, between our tendency to err and God's infinite capacity to forgive. In conclusion, the number 13 holds significant symbolism in the Bible. It is often associated with rebellion, lawlessness, and man-made governments that stand in defiance of the eternal. This symbolism is deeply rooted in biblical narratives, from Nimrod, the 13th generation in Ham's line, to the Valley of Hinnom, mentioned 13 times in Scripture, which was the site of horrific rites dedicated to the false god Molech. We've also explored the number 13's appearances in the Bible, such as in the longest book name, Thessalonians, and the 13 mentions of the dragon, a symbol for Satan. We've seen it in the 13 characteristics of sinful people listed by Apostle Paul, and in the thwarted decree of Haman the Agagite, signed on Nisan 13. We've witnessed it in the destruction of Jericho, marked by the number 13, and in the 13 years King Solomon spent building his own home, in stark contrast to the 7 years he spent on Jerusalem's temple. Yet, the number 13 is not solely a symbol of rebellion and defiance. In the Bible, it also carries a message of mercy and divine love. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai for the second time, carrying a new set of tablets for the 10 Commandments, God enveloped him like a cloud, and according to Jewish tradition, proclaimed 13 forms of his mercy. This shows us that even in the face of rebellion and lawlessness, God's mercy prevails. Through these examples, we see the number 13 as a powerful symbol of the constant struggle between human rebellion and divine mercy. It serves as a reminder of our human weaknesses, but also of the boundless mercy that God extends to us, even in our most rebellious moments. We hope this exploration of the number 13 in the Bible has enlightened you. To support our work in bringing you more insights like this, consider making a donation towards our cause through jehovahsaint.com.